Welcome to my workshop. My name's Darren and this is 3D Prints in the Workshop number 27. Back in 3D Prints in the Workshop number 6, I introduced this router template frame. It's designed to be screwed to your work with countersunk screws in the corners here, or you can block your work in and then screw this to the blocks, either way. And the whole purpose of this originally was to allow me to then use my carousel of plastic letters so I could then route something out like so. In addition to that, I released an oval at the same time, just something that could come in handy for inlay work or a hole on top of a tissue box. And I promised at the time that I released those that I would come back with more. In 3D Prints in the Workshop number 10, I came back with hearts. Hearts, hearts, and more hearts, all in different sizes. And then I used those to make a heart-shaped box, using one size for the inside, one side for the outside, produced the lid and all the rest. The whole thing was cut out. It worked quite well. So, what do you follow hearts with? Now we need clubs, diamonds, and of course spades. So if you were building something like a gaming table, you could use these for the inlay, or you could make these into bowls out of scrap wood. So you could get yourself a piece of scrap wood and then route these out using a bowl bit, and you've just got a fancy shaped little bowl. And that got me thinking, well, what about some different shapes? So now we've got a round bowl separated into 4 if we wanted to. Or we could make ourselves a little organiser. And then of course there's the bow ties. A lot of people are making those slab tables now and using bow ties to join cracks together. So here we go, here's a way of cutting them out. One issue I sometimes run into when clamping things to the top of my workbench is the fact that the holes are laid out in a very even symmetrical pattern. So if I want to use one of my 2 dog fences to clamp like that, we're always sort of clamping on the edge. I never feel, well actually that is a good grip in this case, but sometimes, you know, if you're gluing things together and you're trying to clamp like this isn't the most secure. And because you're off center, what you really need is to be centered opposite the fence. So what I've actually done is I've made a couple of 3 dog fences in 2 different heights. This is the narrow one. That's only 8mm. The other one's a bit taller. And what you can do here, same sort of thing. Now because this is a 3 dog fence, it's now centered on our clamp here. And we can push this across, clamp, and that is a much better grip. And you're not going to pull it off at an angle. It's really good, does a great job. Just be a little bit more careful taking it out. I've got myself a scrap of pine here left over from another job. We're going to pop him down there. A couple of fences to stop it from moving and a clamp. There we go. Now I'm going to avoid the knots and I'm going to stick this hard up against this edge here. To be honest, you could probably get away with 2 screws. All right, what should we make? Should we have the little divider like that? Or should we go with something a little more interesting? I've got myself a few bowl cutting router bits here. One with a 12.7, a 1/2mm shank and a nice great big head on it. And a couple of smaller ones. This is the one that fits, the smaller one. So that's the one we're going to use. And the idea here is, as you can see, there's a bearing on the bit. That bearing will run around the inside here. And of course we'll cut a nice rounded bottom, so our bowl will curve up at the edges. Now ensure when you're using one of these that your first cut plunges in deep enough that the bearing does in fact hit the plastic and not the blade. You don't want to chew the side of your template out. So what I've done is I've set it here so I can see that the bearing will be running on the plastic, and I've set myself up a stop on the turret, on the middle turret, So that'll be my minimum depth of cut, and then spin the turret once more, and that will be a deeper cut to follow on with. I'll have to go deeper than that, but that'll be a good first couple of steps. So as I make sure the bearing hits the plastic of the guide, I'm going to plunge in the center here and then work my way out to the edge rather than plunge near the edge. Now you can see here I've just done exactly what I told you not to do, and I've cut a chunk out of the edge as I've been plunging in here. So now all of my spades are going to have a funny little divot in them. Okay, now keeping in mind I actually did cut the template, which ruined it a little bit. Let's take the template out now and have a look at what we've got. Now what we need to do is we just sand the bottom a little bit smoother in here, maybe even use a bit of a scraper, and then cut this out. Now we could cut a circle around this and have a circular bowl with a spade-shaped indent in it, or we could cut out a square, or using different router bits you could cut this out, cut out a darker piece of timber and whack it in there and you've got yourself some inlay. Of course you wouldn't cut this deep, that being the case. And you wouldn't use a rounded bit. But yeah, if we want to turn this into a little bowl now, all we have to do is cut that out and sand it smooth. With one like this, we could cut out our pattern on the square here and then chuck the whole thing on the lathe and make it round. So you've got a regular lathe turn bowl on the outside, but divisions on the inside. Interesting effect. Now, if you've got one of these old style Incra fences, you may be interested in this little dust hood I made, which just slots in there like that. If I was doing a straight piece of wood like this, just putting a profile or a round over in the edge, I could bring the fence forward until this is almost halfway over the router bit, and that would catch a lot more dust. Because I'm going to be doing curves now, I've moved the fence backwards a little bit, and that'll allow me to maneuver around the router a bit more without bashing the hood here. This is how much dust it would make without that hood. If I just scoot backwards a bit here, you can see how much sawdust there is on the table when I don't use the hood. So for this particular style of Incra fence, that's a great little accessory. We routed out the centre using the template as a guide and a bowl bit with a bearing. I then used this Veritas compass, and what I did is I just used the point of the compass to follow the inside of the bowl all the way around, leaving an offset line, which I then cut out with the bandsaw. After cutting it out with the bandsaw, I went over to the belt sander and I just tidied up the edges before doing a round over at the router table. I've given the whole thing a light sanding by hand, and now I'm just going to give it a bit of a coating with a bit of linseed oil just as a protectant. Of course you don't have to oil, and of course you don't have to use the template to make one of these. Like I said, you could use the template for doing inlay work or for doing something else I haven't even thought of. I'll give that some time to dry and I'll give it another coat. Now I won't make you stick around until the oil dries, and I've done 2 or 3 coats. I've only had the 1 coat so far, but I think you get the idea. It's not really about this itself, it's more about the template guides and what you can do with them. Something like this, for example, if you play card games and you have people around, you could have, say, 4 different ones and you could put nuts and things in them. Each person could have their own little container of nuts. Whatever. The sky's the limit. It's up to your imagination. Hopefully you can put some of these things to use. Have a great day, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye for now.